Hello everyone, it's Fan2021 here, and welcome back to another Storytime video. In the last Storytime video I made, I read Shaun the Sheep movie Farmageddon. But today I'm going to be reading you another new book which I recently purchased, and reading 6 chapters, Wallace and Gromit, A Matter of Loaf and Death, the official novelisation of the film itself. So I'm going to be reading 6 chapters of A Matter of Loaf and Death for you. I'm going to be reading 3 chapters in this video and 3 others in another video next week. So I hope you enjoy the first 3 chapters of Wallace and Gromit, A Matter of Loaf and Death. Screenplay by Nick Park and Bob Baker, and adapted from the screenplay by Penny Worms. Preamble. Baker found dead. Baker Bob was a happy baker, always up before the lark and never once complain. He was particularly happy on the day he died, and not just because business was booming. Baker Bob had just won the Better Baker runner-up prize for his melt-in-the-mouth shortbread, and he was in love again. Life was good. That was why he was singing that fateful morning as he kneaded his dough. He didn't hear the killer slip into the bakery, and it took him a second to realise that his hat had been lifted from his head. When he spun around, the rolling-pin wielding murderer dealt the fatal blow. Baker Bob was left face down in his dough, a waste of a good life as well as a waste of good bread. R.I.P. Baker Bob. Chapter 1. Top Bun. Door-to-door delivery. Gromit was in the kitchen reading the Daily Grind. The headlines read, Baker Bob murdered, 12th baker found dead this year, serial killer strikes again. It made grim reading, especially to all those in the bread business like Wallace and Gromit. Their new bakery was up and running, and they had loyal customers all over town. It had been quite a challenge turning their semi-detached house into a working windmill, but with a little of Wallace's inventiveness and a lot of Gromit's hard work, they had managed it. Downstairs, they had converted the kitchen into an industrial-scale bakery, with mixing machines and bakery ovens. The windmill sails on the front of the house were now working perfectly, providing enough wind power to turn the huge millstone installed in Wallace's bedroom. The sails had a dual purpose too, as rotating advertising boards emblazoned with Top Bun, Wallace and Gromit's traditional bakery. At 5 a.m. sharp, Wallace's alarm clock sprang to life. It was time for him to get up. The Top Bun customers expected freshly baked bread first thing in the morning, and it was Wallace and Gromit's job to deliver, but the alarm clock was having no effect. Wallace had stuffed his ears full of cotton wool so he could get to sleep. It wasn't easy dropping off with your bed next to a working millstone, grinding wheat into flour day and night. Gromit, who had been up for hours baking the bread, decided to switch to a more ingenious method of waking Wallace up. He filled a balloon with water and hooked it to a windmill sail as it passed the kitchen window. As the windmill turned, the balloon was carried up to the top, where it dropped from the sail and fell through a skylight in the roof. It was a direct hit. The balloon burst onto Wallace's face, and the water woke him from a lovely cheesy dream. "Oh, he spluttered. "I was just getting up, lad." Downstairs, Gromit was now manoeuvring a forklift truck to remove a large batch of loaves from the ovens. On hearing Wallace's call, he put the forklift into reverse so he could hit the Get You Up lever on the kitchen wall. Then Gromit went back to the ovens where his loaves were now crusted to perfection. The activation of the Get You Up system set cogs and pulleys in motion. In an instant, a hydraulic system under Wallace's bed started to tip up the headboard end. Wallace disappeared under the sheets and shot out from the foot of the bed. With precision timing, a metal chute from the mill grinder swung round to receive him, and Wallace slid down the chute along with the batches of newly ground flour. "With you in a jiffy," he called to Gromit as he fell. "Tally-ho!" It was a fast and thrilling helter-skelter of a ride as he whizzed past all the machinery, cogs and wheels that drove the mill. It was like travelling down a stainless steel bobsleigh run without the bobsleigh, just his pyjamas preventing any serious skin burn. At the bottom of the shoe was a gigantic mixing bowl with electric whisks whizzing around, mixing the falling flour into the dough mixture. "Oh no!" Wallace cried as he saw where he was heading. He'd forgotten to reset the machine last night from mixing to bagging. He was going to be churned up and made into burger baps. But as always, Gromit was in control. At the last second, he pushed the chute gently round and Wallace continued on his free fall down another channel, heading towards the sack room. He catapulted off the end and landed neatly in his trousers, which were lined up ready for him on the flour sack turnstile. Wallace was then tipped up and landed headfirst into the baker's hat waiting for him on a conveyor belt of cottage loaves, heading for the loading bay. The final stage of the Get You Up system, a large robotic hand pushed Wallace off the conveyor belt and into the waiting top bun van. Wallace made a mental note to reset the system before he went to bed. He didn't want that kind of scare again. Meanwhile, Gromit had loaded the last of the freshly baked loaves and cakes into the back of the van and was now filling up the tank with diesel from the fuel pump. Wallace's mug appeared out of the van window. Gromit switched the pump from diesel to tea and filled up the mug. With both van and Wallace fully fueled, Gromit jumped into the van and activated the garage door. It lifted up like a giant bread bin and the top van sped out to start its rounds. "Ah, lovely cuppa, Gromit," Wallace said, slurping his tea as Gromit drove. "But, a slightly diesely aftertaste, perhaps. How's that breakfast coming along?" Gromit pressed the button on the cassette player in the dashboard and out popped a slice of toast. "Hey, well done, lad," said Wallace, patting Gromit on the head and crushing his baker's hat. Said Wallace, looking at the burnt toast. "It's very well done. But thanks, Chuck." Gromit picked up the newspaper and showed Wallace the headlines. "Oh dear," said Wallace. "Another baker. Battered and with his own rolling pin. Would you credit it?" He finished off his toast. "Still, looking on the bright side." Gromit wrinkled his brow. Just what was the bright side of yet another baker being killed? "I suppose it means more business for us, eh, Gromit?" Wallace never was one to let a grisly murder affect a bright and cheery morning. "Weh-hey! We're on a roll, lad!" Chapter 2. A Good Day's Work. Wallace and Gromit's top bun delivery round was a slick operation. First they had to supply all the businesses across town, from Pato Cake's patisserie on the east side of town to Bert's Butty Bar on the west. After visiting the sandwich shops and other big customers, they went around the neighbourhoods to deliver the householders' daily bread, launching loaves like newspapers out of the van window, through people's letterboxes and into their mailboxes. "Good day's work, lad," Wallace said cheerfully as he was about to deliver the last loaf. "We're bang on." Wallace's voice trailed off. He had suddenly seen a vision on the horizon. It was a lady on a bike, lit up by the sun, her all-white dress billowing in the wind. She was freewheeling towards them, with a little white poodle in her basket. Wallace was so mesmerised that angels started singing in his head. He couldn't even avert his gaze to lob the last loaf out of the window towards the mailbox of number 47, which was unlucky for a little old woman who was walking along the pavement outside. She was knocked sideways over a fence by the flying bread. Wallace didn't even notice. As she passed, the lady on the bike rang her bell and waved. Wallace couldn't believe it. "Gromit, did you see who that was?" he asked excitedly. The angels in Wallace's head were singing, "Light as a feather, you're the baker-like girl," a jingle from an old TV advert. It had been one of the first colour adverts on TV, and its impact on the nation was huge. From the first time he had seen her, Wallace had been captivated by the Bakelite girl. She floated onto the screen suspended from a hot air balloon on a swing. As she glided through the sunlit sky, she looked a vision of feminine loveliness. "Get slimmer with Bakelite bread" was the slogan, and it was the most successful advertising campaign of the day. Within weeks, every woman was eating it, hoping to look like the Bakelite girl, and there was no doubt in Wallace's mind it was like the very same Bakelite girl who had just cycled past them. In real life, she was older and rounder, but to Wallace she was still a vision of loveliness. Wallace was shaken from his daydream by a scream. "Oh no! The Bakelite girl was in trouble!" With a sharp handbrake turn, Wallace was off in pursuit of the damsel in distress. As they got closer, they could see the lady pulling on the brakes, but it was having no effect. The bike was heading downhill and gaining speed. Even the poodle looked scared. "Here, Gromit, take the wheel," said Wallace, literally handing Gromit the steering wheel. Gromit had to slide over and put the steering wheel back on, while Wallace heroically climbed out of the van window and jumped across towards the bike. He landed sitting down on the front mudguard of the bike, facing the panicking lady. "Don't fret, madam," he shouted. Wallace turned towards the van and yelled to Gromit, "Tea cakes, lad! The wholemeal fruit on me knees!" With precise aim, Gromit threw the tea cakes, and Wallace caught them between his knees, squeezing them on the front wheel like brake pads. Wallace had calculated that the strength of his thigh muscles combined with texture and consistency of the tea cakes should cause enough friction to slow the bike down. And it worked at first, but the buns began to smoke. "Oh," panicked Wallace, "we should have tried the granary rolls." He turned to see where they were heading, straight for the town zoo. "Oh, heck!" he cried, desperately trying to think of another plan. But the bike was gaining even more speed now. With Wallace's weight on the front, things weren't looking good. Finally, Chapter 3. Crocs Away. The bike whizzed through the zoo gates, with Wallace, the Bakelite girl, and the poodle all clutching on tightly. Its front wheels smashed into the wall of the crocodile pit, and all three of them were propelled over the handlebars towards the waiting reptiles. Wallace managed to stop himself from falling by catching his feet on the edge of the wall. He grabbed the ankle of the Bakelite girl just in time. As he held on tightly as he could, only Wallace's toes were stopping them both from following the poodle down into the pit, and she was falling towards the open jaws of a hungry crocodile. It was Gromit who saved her. Armed only with a French stick, he heroically dived down, grabbing the Bakelite girl's hat as he passed, just as Tarzan would grab a vine. Gromit knew that at some point the elastic on the hat would snap back. He wedged the French stick into the crocodile's mouth and grabbed the poodle just as the elastic reached full stretch. As it retracted, Gromit and the poodle were pulled from the crocodile's mouth and then catapulted out of the pit to safety. Wallace held the Bakelite girl back over the wall. "Are you all right, miss?" he fussed. "I do apologise," she purred. She fluttered her eyelashes at Wallace, and despite her increased age and waistline, he was instantly besotted. "It's an honour to be of help," he said. "I must get those brakes seen to," she giggled. "We're so grateful, aren't we, Fluffles?" They both looked down at the little poodle, who was safely back by her mistress's side. She was shaking, which Wallace thought was quite understandable after all she'd been through. Poor little pooch. "Fluffles," repeated the lady, but it was more like a command this time. The dog jumped up and trotted over to Wallace. Unexpectedly, she leapt into his arms and began to lick his face. "Oh, it was nothing," laughed Wallace. "What a lovely little doggy." Every bit as charming as her owner, Wallace thought. Gromit looked over at the poodle in Wallace's arms. Was it just canine jealousy, or was there something strange about this dog's behaviour? He picked up the bicycle to check the brakes, but to his surprise they seemed to be working perfectly. Now, Now that was odd. Gromit thought. Very odd indeed. The lady introduced herself to Wallace. "My name's Piella. Piella Bakewell," she said. "Oh," said Wallace, "I know who you are, miss." He launched into the Bakelite jingle. "Light as a feather, you're the Bakelite girl." "That's me," said Piella brightly. "I'm Wallace," he said eagerly. "I'm inbred myself." He didn't mention that the mill was like a shrine to the Bakelite girl. The bakery clock was in the shape of the Bakelite balloon, and its pendulum was Piella on her swing. They had a Bakelite teapot too, and even Wallace's bed thing looked like a Bakelite advert. Piella's face was everywhere. "Are you still ballooning, miss?" Wallace asked innocently. Piella thought he was referring to her inflated size. "I do beg your pardon," she said, offended but trying to hide it. "Oh, no, no," Wallace stammered, trying to recover the situation. He felt the blood rush to his cheeks. He meant no offence, quite the opposite. He just wanted to keep Piella talking so he could gaze at her loveliness for a little bit longer. "I mean the Bakelite balloon," he said. "Do you still fly it?" "Oh, I see," said Piella, looking wistful. Whenever anyone reminded her of that hot air balloon, it took her back in time. It had been a magical feeling, floating silently through the day, airy and weightless. "No, not any more," she said flatly. They looked into one another's eyes until Wallace looked away awkwardly. The conversation was taking a turn for the worse, when it had started out so well. "Well, better be going," he said, hoping the embarrassing redness had faded from his cheeks. "Back to the grind, as it were. Goodbye, Miss Bakewell." "Oh, Mr. Wallace," she protested, her charm suddenly returning. "I'd rather say au revoir." Wallace brightened. He didn't understand French, but he thought this meant something about seeing one another again. "Oui, oui," Wallace responded. He didn't want to seem uncultured, but that was the only French he knew. And bon appetit, madame. And now we have reached chapter 4, until we meet again. So that is going to be it for this video, everyone. So in the next video, which will be another storytime video, reading A Matter of Loaf and Death, we will be starting from chapter 4 and reading up to chapter 6. So I hope you enjoyed this first part of Wallace and Gromit, A Matter of Loaf and Death, and I will see you next time for part 2. So this is Aardman Fan 2021, and I'll see you next time.